This is a quick introduction to the SQLPage web development framework. I'm going to go through a couple examples here. First example is one line. Put a component on the screen using this code. This component is going to be a list component. List component will have the word items displayed as a title, and it will display all the rows from a table called table, and it will show the column as the title for each row. You can see it right here. So you can see there's items at the top, and then there are a number of rows pulled from that database table. Next line is a 4-line interactive app. The first line creates a database table if it doesn't exist, and it creates a table called things with a single column called items that will store text. This line inserts values into that database table in the items column wherever the submitted value, wherever the submitted post value called item isn't null. So if there is a value submitted, it will insert that into the things database in the items column. Next, this line shows a form UI component on the screen for the user. That form has the words add title as the displayed title. And then it has a single field with the description title shown for that field. When the form is submitted, that field called item is referred to with this colon. So when the user submits an item, the application then can use that submitted value just by prepending a colon. Finally, there's a 4th line that displays a list component with the word items shown as the title on screen, and then all of the values from the things table in the items column are displayed in the list. You can see that run here. So you can see there's a form, the words add item, a single field with text item. If we submit a word here, that item value is added to the database and displayed below. And then we have a full 8-line CRUD example with a sortable data table, so a data grid. And the variables here are a little bit cryptic. To keep things short, there's another version here you can click on that's a little bit more readable with nicer readable variables, if that is more appealing. But to go through each of the lines, the first line creates a table in the database. If it doesn't exist, we're going to call that table T. It will have a primary key column, which we're calling ID. It will have a column called A, which will store some text. This line inserts into that table in the A column the value which has been submitted from a form, as long as the edit variable, which you'll see below, is null. So as long as we're not editing, and as long as that submitted value is not null. This line updates a value in the T table. And what we're doing is setting the A column value to the submitted A value, submitted A variable. And we're doing that wherever the ID column isn't set to an edit value, and wherever the A is not null, and we'll see this edit variable down below. Here we're going to delete from the T table wherever the ID equals this D variable that we've set down below. And these lines put some UI components on the screen. This puts a button on the screen When the button is clicked, it goes back to the home page and sort of clears the screen. That button has the word new displayed as its title. This line displays a form component, and that form will optionally be populated with a submitted edit value if there is a submitted edit value, and it will display a single field with the word A as the field name. So you can see that A value when the application gets that submission, takes the value and can update and insert and do other operations with that submitted value. These final two lines display a table component. You can think of that as a data grid. That displays some markdown code with the header X in one column and then a blank header in the other column. And this is set to be automatically sortable by columns. And what's going to be displayed in that table is this. We will display the value in the A column of the database in a column that's headed as A. We'll display the I or ID column in the table that's going to have a visual header with the letter I above it. Here we have some markdown code displayed. And what this does is create a link with the word edit, and that link links back to the application with an eQuery variable set to the ID column. And there's no header here for that column. And then this is another markdown link. The letter X then links back to the application with this query value D set to the ID that's selected on that row. And we are putting that in a column that's headed with the letter X, and all those values are pulled from the T database, or from the D table in the database. Here we have a new button, clear the screen. We can add some values. We can edit some values. Here. We can delete some values, and also we can sort some values. Let's do this again. I didn't press new. Try this again. So now you can see we can sort by the A column, and we can sort by the I column. So full CRUD application in 8 lines that is much more complicated to do in any other software development framework. Okay, this is an example that calls REST API in one line. Got an API here at a tiny URL address. What we're going to do is put a code component on the screen, and as its contents, we're going to fetch the results from this API. And there you go. This example integrates an API at this address. You can see we're going to format some values here. What we're going to do is put a form on the screen, and it's going to have one field labeled location. When that form is submitted, that variable location is gotten by using a colon symbol. And we're going to set a variable here called L, which we're going to set to the location that's been submitted, or if there's no location submitted, we're going to set it to an empty string. So when the page opens, we have that location variable set to a empty string. We're going to create another variable here, which is the results of this API fetch. We're going to get the results of this concatenated URL. So the URL is going to be the URL of the API with these query variables set, and the Q variable there is set to this URL encoded L variable, the location variable. So we're calling this API, which is a API that gives us longitude and latitude values based on a query that we put, a location query that we input into the form. And finally, we're using a SQLPage map component, going to display a SQLPage map component. And we are going to get the lat value and the long value from the API result and put in the map component those values as the latitude and longitude. You can see around here. Type in a place, submit it, and you can see it puts on a leaflet map that place. Try a number of different ones. Here's the Eiffel Tower. It's fully functional leaflet application in 4 lines of code. You can also create APIs, REST APIs or web APIs or API endpoints. Those terms all mean the same thing with just a little bit of SQLPage code. So we're going to, in this application, use a SQLPage JSON component. We're going to create a JSON object, messages object, and we're going to group together a bunch of other JSON objects here that are author and message values pulled from the author and message columns of this messages table. Put that in the contents of the JSON component. So see that run? We've got some JSON there. That's usable by other applications. We'll see that in a minute. So you can call that API from any other language that supports web APIs. And here we can call some Python code. So this extends the capability of SQLPage. We don't just need to use Python code. We can use code written in any program language. Here we're calling some code written in a count.py file. This is the code. Basically, that just splits up a bunch of words and counts how many words there are in a text. So we're going to use that code here in this SQLPage example like this. In this example, we're going to put a form component on the screen. That form will have several fields. One will be text, and actually just one field named text. It will have a text area type. So instead of a text field, it will be a larger text area. And when the application is run, if some text has been submitted from that field, it will display that text as the value in the text area. Next, we're going to set a variable W to be either the submitted text, or if there's no submitted text, it will be an empty string. Then finally, we're going to display a text component with the contents set to this concatenated string, this joined together string. So what we're going to do is the word count with a little space, and then join that together with the results of this executed Python script. We're going to run the count.py script and send it that W variable. So here is this example. We have a text area, submit, and it uses that Python code to count the submitted words, display, return the result, and display that result in the text area or in the text field. So doing all this is really simple with SQLPage. You can download the version for your operating system here. We're on Windows, so I'm going to download this. You can see the binary is very small. It's 7 megs. Downloads immediately. You can open that up. And we're just going to extract that. I'll go ahead and put it in the same folder it was downloaded in. Again, you can see very quick. We can download or delete this zip file. So now you've got a SQL page executable and a SQL page folder. In the SQL page folder, there is a JSON file. And in this JSON file, we have all of the configuration settings. By default, The database type is SQLite, and it uses this SQLPage db.file with a certain mode given. We can choose to rename this, or we can also choose to use a different database. If this SQLite file isn't in existence, the application will create it. You can also choose to use SQL Server, MS SQL, MySQL, Postgres, and any compatible databases like MariaDB. All the other settings that you can adjust will be saved in this file. So the port and any other the web root directory, those sorts of things, as well as security features can be set up in this JSON file. So what we're going to do here next is, once we've got this downloaded, we can run that application, and you'll see that the application is running on port 8080 by default. So let's do this, run it. And we have to give it permission in Windows to run. In Linux, you want to set it to executable. And so you can see here it's running on port 8080. Go back to our browser, and if you open up localhost 8080, you'll see a message saying that it works. And then to run an application with that server, we'll grab some of this code. This is the example up above here, the 4-line example. So we'll grab that code, we'll paste it into a file, and we're going to save that file with a .sql, a .sql extension. SQLPage can serve other types of files, HTML files, text files, and anything else. But if we want that file to be evaluated as a SQLPage bit of code, then it needs to have the .sql extension. So we save that, and then we can go here. Let's just save it. So now we can run. This is now running on our local machine at that address in the file items.sql. Open that up, and you can see we've got the same little 4-line example that you saw earlier. And those values are being stored in the SQLPage folder in the SQLPage.db, which again, you can configure using JSON or use another database there. Let's go here. And there is a video here about how to install and run this on Linux, on a VPS server, which generally are inexpensive. All of the configuration options are listed on this page. So everything you can do to set up the file, how to set up the database. And if you don't want to have to bother with any of that, or if you don't want to have to learn about operating systems and using Linux, just go to this web page. The makers of SQLPage have created a hosting service where all you need to do is write your files and upload as many files as you can store on that in your account, and they just run instantly without any configuration. Okay, so a few more examples here. Each of these has some source code that you can look at and a running example that you can click on. So the source code for this context example, it's basically the same as that 8-line application you saw earlier. We create a table, we insert some values into the table, and those values aren't null. We update selected records, we delete selected records, conditionally show some values in a form, some selected edited values in a form. We have a new button that links back to the page, kind of refreshes the page. And then we have a table that has some markdown columns and some other columns that are composed down here, and which also displays some of the other values from the database. You see that running here. And part of the point of this example is to show just how fast SQLPage is. There are several thousand lines. That's that quick. And you can actually edit and run. These things are this quick. Click submit, and SQLPage has displayed all those thousands of lines again. You you can handle a few thousand lines very comfortably in SQLPage forms, and up to maybe about 10,000 reasonably, but basically instant up to a few thousand. So really, really super performant. And also interestingly, the SQLPage runs nicely on extremely old browsers, ancient browsers. So it's very useful for making old machines work well. Next source code here. This is a much more in-depth CRUD application, create, read, update, delete, with a lot of features that you typically see in applications such as server-based filtering. So you can search here, you can see how quickly the results are showing up. And then we can do searching within the results. That. Let's see, a little bit nicer layout for the form. Submit this. And there's also pagination. So we can go next, previous, last, first. Look on that last item which we just submitted. And this one has a nicer icon and a confirmation for delete. So a few examples there in that application that cover most of the common things you'll see in CRUD application development. Go back here. And this map application sort of demonstrates how to combine API and CRUD types of coding. So we're going to create a table with the option to delete and to insert values into that table and display them in a UI table or data grid component. And I have a form then that lets us insert new values, and we're going to display those values on a map component. So take a look at this. You can see here we have one value. You can go view and it views it on the map, and then down here we can add, and up here we can delete values. Okay, so this example is just an example of a slightly more robust API request body. Here's the source code. We're going to call a weather API, so we have a little bit more complex request body. Shows us how to do that, and we can click the running example, put in a zip code, and it will tell us the speed of the wind and the temperature, the current wind and temperature. This example is all about demonstrating a custom component. So there are a lot of built-in components in the SQLPage framework that are really useful. We can also build custom components using Bootstrap and Tabular by default, but also any other custom CSS. So this is a custom component. This application is using a custom component that's been built. It's a little animated gallery showing live views from webcams. And the way this works, the actual component is super simple to use. Here you can see it's just a couple lines of code. We've created this animated image list 2 component. We put the title web gallery on it, and we've selected some values from a webcams database table. And so that's what you're seeing when you when you run this. Let's try this again. When you run this application, you can see the webcam gallery title and then all the values from the database, including the image and the name. And the code that created this custom component is here. It's basically a bunch of CSS and some handlebars notation that lets you put in values into your components. So that's one way to customize capabilities of SQLPage. Down here, I've got some other examples of how you can integrate with apps written in other technologies. So there's a little bit of code that inserts a number of other applications written in other technologies into iframes. So here we can see a message board that's been written in Bootstrap and plain.js and some Bottle. It's a working app right in the SQLPage app. There's a file uploader written in Python, and Flask backend. This is a application written in Nice GUI. This is an application written in Streamlit. This is my homepage inserted directly here in the SQLPage application. This is written in Anvil. And it's compute.com, the dash. And then this application is written in jQuery and Bootstrap and Flask on the back end. And the whole point of this is just to demonstrate that you can insert these applications very easily. Let's put this in, take a look at it with just a little bit of SQLPage code. So this is a inline CRUD application. You can add and remove contexts and change account settings and log out. Let's go back here. And so iframes can be really useful. This is a little example here of how we can use it. So you've seen an API written in SQLPage earlier. Here's the source code for this. And here's the output of that application. Some JSON. This is an example written in Bootstrap. So something not written in SQLPage. And of course, it's much more verbose than SQLPage. The output looks like this. This is a table written in Bootstrap. And what that Bootstrap application is doing is calling this message API that we created in SQLPage. So it's interacting with output from the SQLPage application, which is really easy to create in SQLPage. And then this application is another SQLPage application. Basically, all we're doing is putting a card on screen, and in that card, we're embedding this Bootstrap application that you just saw. So right here. So sort of a round trip served some data from the SQLPage application to a third-party technology, and then included that third-party technology, displayed the application back in the SQLPage. So it makes for really easy integrations with basically any other technology, web technology that you want to integrate. So to see how all this is done, there's some tutorials down here. This fast-paced tutorial is recommended if you've done any programming at all. If you've ever used SQL, a lot of this will be familiar. This will sort of get you through everything really quickly, and it's very comprehensive, covers even how to compile SQLPage from source, how to host, and so on. So how to create custom components. And this next tutorial is for absolute beginner developers. This has a little bit more description, screenshots, and so on. So you can go there if you're totally new to development. And then this link goes to the official documentation, which is fantastic. It covers all the components, all the functions, how to make custom components, and how to configure the system. And then this is just the home page for the SQLPage framework, where you can basically get all the other links for GitHub and for all the other resources you need to work with SQLPage. So that should cover it. If you have any questions, you can write me at nick@compute.com, and you can see that right here, that up here. If you want to hire me to do software development work, or if you'd like to hire me for tutoring, you can reach me here. It's com-pute.com, nick@compute.com.